Hey everyone, this is Clinton,
And this is Dalton.
and this is the LA Do Wrestling Podcast.
So without further ado, let's get ready to podcast!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the LA Do Wrestling Podcast, where we talk about all wrestling, from the past, present, and future.
Last time we were talking about the Hell in a Cell. This time, Buried Alive. I probably say infamous Buried Alive match has taken many different shapes and forms over the last 24 years. Yeah, there's been a total of 6 Buried Alive matches. Technically 5 under the moniker Buried Alive match. 1 different type of name. Basically the same concept. We'll get to that later on. But in current wrestling news, start off. Currently the WWE is under investigation. More precisely, their venues are being under investigation at the moment. The Performance Center, Full Sail University, their arena, and the current WWE Thunderdome and the Amway Center, they're under investigation right now because of increase in COVID-19 cases. And this has been happening over the last few months, so it's not anything new, but they're just now under investigation. Speaking of COVID, I believe it was Bad Boy Joey Janela in AEW. He recently not tested positive. He was around someone who tested positive. So they pulled him from his match on Wednesday, where he was supposed to face Kenny Omega in one of the first round matches for their world title number one contender match or tournament. He was pulled. He was replaced by Sonny Kiss. Pretty sure Sonny Kiss got beat really, really fast. It was like Kenny Omega hit him with one knee and then hit a one-winged angel, and that was it. It was very quick, but they had to pull Janela out of the match.
I mean, no disrespect to Sonny Kiss. However, I feel the match was just kind of... When you have to replace someone, the momentum for the match kind of takes it
goes down.
Everything. Like, it was the same thing with Clash of Champions when Asuka had to take Nikki Cross's place. Like, it was out, nothing.
Well, something bigger when Roman was replaced by Braun Strowman at WrestleMania. That's something big. I mean, hopefully Janela doesn't test positive. He was just around someone who had tested positive or shown symptoms. It was one of the two.
And if he's having the test, does that mean his girlfriend, who is in NXT right now, has to be tested? Or they've not been close to one another? Because they're in Florida, but I think they're in... Where are they at? They're in Florida as well,
Daly's place is in Jacksonville.
Okay, so yeah, they're pretty close.
The Amway Center is still in Orlando. If they're dating, I would not put it past them that they'd probably be living together.
Well, that's like one thing I want to say is that, I mean, I don't think any of these people have any type of symptoms or whatever, but people who are in relationships in wrestling right now, and even maybe sports in general, NFL, NBA, everyone that's in sports
right
now. Well, I'm just saying everyone in general, doing sports, but wrestling. Joey Janela has to be tested to see if it's positive or negative. His girlfriend is in NXT, but at the same time, let's say if Joey Janela does test positive, does that mean someone such as Sean Spears was near him, and then now Peyton Royce has to... I'm not trying to name names because obviously, but these are examples of AEW and WWE couples.
They'd have
That's
to...
what I'm trying to get at. They're both in the same state.
Well, my whole thing is Joey Janela was in contact with someone from an indie show. So that can mean more problems for more promotions. Because if one person showed symptoms or tested positive at an indie show in a different state...
That's what I was saying. Is in a different state.
Say that it was at the event that had a bunch of Impact Wrestling superstars, that had a bunch of AEW superstars. That is a big problem. Because
we have a big possibility that a bunch of
Well,
companies
depends.
might
It
be
depends.
affected by this.
It depends on who was there, what event it was, who it was, who was around this person. That's why you got to test.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it doesn't result in that, but it is a possibility. You
'Cause
could see an increased spike of people either laying out because they have been in contact with someone who had or possibly has it, or if they start testing positive and don't want to spread it, and that has a lot of wrestlers lay out.
Yeah, and the thing is that you don't ever want to have any of the talent be affected, especially by, the pandemic. But if it's affecting more companies, that's affecting more people working, how long it will take for them to come back. It's taking away entertainment from the audience, stuff like that.
It ruins their product. It ruins storylines because you have to put it on the back burner for ever so long.
We've never dealt with something like this on this, extreme in the entire
Not
world.
when it comes to a pandemic. The only ever time that something big happened in wrestling that was like this happened to WWE when a lot of their superstars could not make it back to the United States and were trapped in Europe after flights were canceled when Mount Vesuvius in Italy had begun smoking.
Yeah.
And had a lot of ash clouds. You couldn't fly. So there was a large portion of the not the audience, but the audience, but also the superstars in WWE that couldn't come home and go to the States and continue with their shows for about a week because of that. And that's the only time really that I can think of besides the Saudi Arabia stuff that happened with the flight. But even then, I don't think it was as big as the Mount Vesuvius stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think I don't know if did it affect any TV time?
I'm not sure. I don't think it did for the most part.
Because I think a lot of big stars were there, so I don't think it really affected, besides Brock, but I don't think it affected everything. I think Cena might have been there at the time in Saudi. I think he stayed back if he was there, I think is who they said stayed back.
But they were also, even when they continued to do shows without the people that couldn't make it, whether it be the Saudi Arabia shows and all that stuff, and they couldn't make it back, they still found a way to make a show. Like, maybe it wasn't exactly what they wanted, but they made a show happen.
Well, when it happened with Mount Vesuvius, it was a lot of Raw superstars couldn't make it. SmackDown superstars did make it, and there was a lot of SmackDown superstars on Raw that night to fill it out and have matches and stuff. So they found a way to do it. They just had to use a different kind of roster.
This has nothing to do with wrestling itself, but it's still interesting to me when it comes to, still being able to put on a show, that they were able to do a show when that blizzard happened, and they had to do a rerun of the Royal Rumble that year. But, you had Ambrose and JBL and all that stuff who were able to still make the show good instead of just having to watch the Rumble, which isn't a bad thing. Watching a pay-per-view on Monday Night Raw is kind of cool.
That was
but
the 2015 Rumble,
yes,
right?
it was. So, it wasn't the greatest Rumble.
Oh, no, because Rumble won.
But you also had you had Cena versus Rollins versus Lesnar. That was a pretty decent match. One of the match of the year candidates for that year. I mean, it was still a pretty good match to be able to watch. But like I said, with Ambrose and JBL and all of them in the headquarters being able to do stuff, I mean, I thought that was very entertaining.
During a blizzard.
Oh, yeah, stuff like that. But I really hope that I hope that, WWE, AEW, Impact, all of them have been able to keep everything, safe for their workers and all that, so that maybe...
Well, you can't say WWE because they're under investigation.
Well, I'm saying that hopefully maybe after this, if there has been a problem, they can solve it and make it better, is what I'm trying to get at.
You can hope. The original Buried Alive match actually had its anniversary here lately. On October 20th, 1996 was the first Buried Alive match. And it took place at In Your House, and it was between The Undertaker and Mankind. Now, this was 2 years before their Hell in a Cell match. So, obviously, the feud didn't end there. It kind of continued. But, this was... Was this before the Boiler Room Brawl, or was it after?
I'm not sure. I think it was around the same time, but this was definitely a time in which Mankind was taken more serious.
Well, the reason I ask is because this is another first for the two. Because they had the first Boiler Room Brawl, they had the first Buried Alive match. So it's interesting to see how many times they had the first in their series.
Yeah.
A little side note: Undertaker has literally been in every single Buried Alive match, and he has the worst record in a Buried Alive match. Technically, he is 2-4 out of the 6 total Buried Alive matches. Technically, like I said, the last Buried Alive match technically isn't because of its name, but it's the same concept, so I count it. But the first Buried Alive match, some things to note about it. To know about it, some key things, is that this match technically didn't end fair because as Undertaker was about to finish off Mankind, Bradshaw, later known as JBL, Triple H, and the Executioner jumped Undertaker during the match, and collectively beat him up, ganged up on him, voice crack, along with Mankind, and eventually threw him into the grave and buried him. As they were burying him, Clinton's favorite moment in this match happened, and what was it?
So during the end of this match, as everyone is burying the Undertaker, Mankind, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, all of them are burying him. Paul Bearer is going crazy. He's like, "Oh, the Undertaker's dead. He's finally dead. Yay!" And then audience member throws a large Coca-Cola cup into the grave, and ice just splatters all in it. And it's just funny because you know that around that time, that's when a lot of fans would throw trash in.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because during the 90s, 80s and 90s, a lot of fans would not get in trouble for throwing stuff in the ring. Except for ECW when they threw chairs.
Speaking of that, just going off on a little tangent, it bothers me that at ECW, all the people were throwing chairs in, and then it became a problem. But then in TNA, the Dudleys, at that time known as Team 3D, asked for the chairs to be thrown in. And then they threw in all the chairs, and then they were like, "No, stop with the chairs." It's like, but she asked for it. Like, I'm not saying anything bad about Team 3D or, the Dudleys or whatever, but what I'm saying is that they asked for the chairs that time, but at first it was like a horrible thing and like everyone's going to get injured. But,
well, the only thing was anyone in the ring in TNA when they did that?
No, but some of them were on the side of the ring, and not all the chairs made it into the 6-sided ring.
Well, that's my thing, though. In ECW, you had, I think it was, Terry Funk in the ring?
You had people, like, you had one person in the corner. I can't remember if it was Terry Funk or not.
No, I think Terry Funk was in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, like the corner, like, like
mat.
sitting in the corner
at
like
the
Raven.
Turnbuckle, yeah.
Yeah.
My thing is, they started throwing, the chairs in. Terry Funk, I think, got pelted. Whoever else was in the match, I don't remember who it was, definitely got buried under the chairs before he got out the ring. They had Joey Styles, of all people, try to get on the mic and say, "Stop throwing the chairs," and they continued. My only thing is, I don't think in TNA they had somebody, being pelted with the chairs, you know what I mean? I think they were just throwing them.
But that's happened in many promotions. TNA, ECW, I think ROH at one point, a lot of different. CZW, I'm sure.
WWE never did, just because they didn't really give fans the opportunity to throw their chairs in the ring. You know what I mean? Because you had some chairs on the front row, but that was it. In ECW, you didn't really have that. You had all chairs, pretty much, unless you had bleachers. ROH was the same way. TNA really was the same way, depending on what venue it was in.
But no, I mean, when you're going back to the Buried Alive match, you had already seen trash in the grave.
Yeah.
There was already trash in there, don't get me wrong. The fans were going crazy. Well, whether it mattered or not, they would throw trash in there. It didn't matter. They were like, "I don't have to throw it in a garbage can. I'm going to throw it in the ring."
Well, no, they were really throwing it.
Well, they were upset. They were mad.
They were pissed off.
But
Undertaker was getting beat. He was the baby face at the time.
But it's just, when you're half asleep watching this match.
This is the turn of the Attitude Era.
Yeah. When you're half asleep watching this match and then a cup of ice smacks into the grave, Undertaker's like supposed to be under it, that's just funny. It was so good. Just, if you haven't seen it, go see it because it's so funny.
But after that, really what this match is known for, other than being the first ever Buried Alive match, is for the ending, where Undertaker's buried. They have the tombstone saying, Undertaker versus Mankind, the date, everything. Lightning strikes the grave, and the Undertaker's hand shoots out from the ground, and his glove appears, showing that he's still alive. That iconic image and moment is really what the match is known for.
I mean, I think it would be funny because you know how they make merch that has the glove shooting out of the grave? Like, they've done that before.
Did they?
They've had, like, things like that. Like, like, maybe, like, the pictures, the shirts, the cup. They need to have one with the soda cup in the grave instead. God. That'd be so funny. I would purchase that. I'm sure it would sell, like, 10 shirts, kind of like the James Ellsworth shirts. No, actually, those sold like crazy. But, no, I think I would buy that shirt. But moving on.
I wouldn't. The next Buried Alive match would not occur until 2 years later in 1998, and it would be at In Your House Rock Bottom, the event named after The Rock, because it was their corporation. December 13th, 1998, Stone Cold versus The Undertaker. When it comes, I think this might have been the time of, correct me if I'm wrong, and if someone in the comments wants to correct me as well, for YouTube. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Undertaker was a heel at this time. Had to be.
I think this was ministry time, so yeah.
That's
like most definitely.
Corporate ministry, probably.
Yeah, probably.
The reason I say that is because of what happens in the match. Some key moments from the match. At one point in the grave, they fought around the arena, and Undertaker, as I was reading through the highlights on WWE.com, it was saying that, he was hiding away from Stone Cold, trying to sneak attack him, this and that. So yeah, he probably was a heel at the time, but flames came from the grave, so they had a little bit of pyrotechnics in this one. At one point, I think Stone Cold got thrown around in the back, and Undertaker was either dragged out or had walked back out to the gravesite, and Kane was there. I think it might have been that Undertaker and Stone Cold were there. Undertaker was attempting to bury Stone Cold, and then Kane came out and tombstoned the Undertaker, and he was rolled into the grave or thrown into the grave, and then Stone Cold came out with a giant backhoe and poured dirt on him. So this was the first match that really used a machine to bury someone, which is interesting because in the first one it was everybody just like digging dirt.
They got way more creative in this one than they did in the original. Like the original's the original, and you have to figure out what you're going to do.
To know what they
but they got super creative in this one compared to the other one.
But like I said earlier, Undertaker does not have a good track record. He's 0-2 at this point in Buried Alive. Once again, anytime the Undertaker loses, I'll say this, and you'll see a recurring theme. He does not lose fairly. He loses, even as a heel, he loses due to someone coming out and stopping him. The next Buried Alive match is actually a tag team Buried Alive match. It was on SmackDown on September 9th, 1999, so a little less than a year after. I think it's funny just because 9/9/99.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And I think it's funny just because, the network, 9.99, just a bunch of nines. Hashtag not sponsored. It's funny. But in this match, it's kind of weird because when you think about a tag team match, certain tag team matches, like a tag team tables match, back in the day, at least back in like 2000, 2001 during the Attitude Era, both partners had to be put through the table or, had to be this or that. You know what I mean? In this one, only one person had to be buried. The tag team match consisted of the Rock and Sock Connection, Mankind, and The Rock versus the tag team of The Undertaker and The Big Show. Mankind and The Rock were the World Tag Team Champions at the time. This was for the titles. Now, this match is a match that we recently heard Mick Foley talk about on Inside the Ropes, because it was on an old interview probably from a couple years ago, or probably from a year or two ago, I'd say, because he was wearing a Rhea Ripley shirt. Mick Foley was talking about this match because, you know, everybody talks about the Hell in a Cell. The first Hell in a Cell, how he got thrown off of it, did it hurt, this and that. And, like, someone's kid, can't remember who it was, he was talking about on the story, saying that, you know, he said, did it hurt when? And then he immediately started saying, oh, God, in his head, talking about the Hell in a Cell. Did it hurt when Big Show choke slams you from the stage into the grave? And it was from this event. That is like the biggest moment from this match that's probably known for the most, just because
he got slammed hard.
Yeah, Big Show, to put it in perspective, SmackDown stage, it was elevated at this time, kind of like Raw. It wasn't situated on the ground. And then the grave site was built next to the stage, kind of further away from it. According to Mick Foley, he said, he told the Big Show, or asked him, can you throw me over there? Can you throw me all the way over there? He's like, well, yeah, I can. And chucked him. Like, threw him like a rag doll. He bounced.
So, I wanted to interrupt for a second, because it has to do with this. You know how they make that joke that the apron's the hardest part of the ring?
Yeah.
He hit the hardest part of that grave.
Oh yeah, he hit the dirt hard.
Hardest.
Because I'm sure that, you know, the grave set up, it's not 100% dirt, because they had to make it stay. You know what I mean?
Whatever he hit, he smacked it. Whether it was all dirt, whether there was a
now the
piece
top
of
layer,
metal,
I guarantee, is dirt.
He hit straight up. Whatever it was, hard.
He bounced into the grave. He looked like a rock being skipped over a lake. He chucked him so hard.
It's really funny though.
I mean, I know it hurt, but it's kind of funny to look at, but then you think, oh yeah, that was a person getting chucked. So it kind of makes you think, you know, God. But that wasn't even the end of the match, believe it or not. The end of the match came when good old Triple H and his golden sledgehammer.
The game!
Instead of burying someone with a shovel, he buried somebody with his sledgehammer, because he hit Mankind with his sledgehammer, and that officially puts him down for the count into the grave. And Mankind is buried. The Rock is not. Kind of figures. Match is over. Undertaker and Big Show start their reign as the World Tag Team Champions. It's funny to me because not only did Triple H at one time help Mankind in a Buried Alive match, now he's helping Undertaker in a Buried Alive match against Mankind. It's kind of weird when you think about it, but it's not a good track record for these matches, because the last three have had one person or multiple people interrupt and, you know, get involved in the match. And that goes for the first five. Actually, no. It goes for all six.
All six. Yeah, I was about to say, no, that
the
last
only time
one,
that it didn't make a difference was the sixth match, because even the people interfering, it didn't matter because they didn't help the said person win. This did. You know, like the first five, whoever interrupted helped someone win.
So, I wanted to bring this up because we're talking about the first and only tag team Buried Alive match.
Out of
what we have now, which I don't know how many more Buried Alive matches we're gonna have. But now this might be me. I just want your opinion, and if you're listening on YouTube, put in the comments if you think this is a good or bad idea, if they could have done it. Undertaker had his little thing with MVP and Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah.
How interesting do you think it would have been if it would have been the first and only at that point handicap Buried Alive match? MVP and Mr. Kennedy versus The Undertaker. I think that would have been really cool.
It would have been interesting.
Because wouldn't it be cool if not Kane, I'm sorry. I was thinking Kane would join in, be Brothers of Destruction. That's what I was just thinking about. And maybe it could be a 2-on-2.
Well, at that point, they would have been on different rosters.
But how cool would it be if Undertaker was able to win that match, but throw Kennedy and MVP on top of one another? And like into the grave or right next to each other. It would have been like,
or have two graves.
Like a double choke slam or something into both graves. That would have been I don't know if that was a missed opportunity or maybe they just didn't want to do it. Maybe it's a bad idea. That's why I was saying
It would have
I
been-
think that would have been really good.
They probably would have done it if they did do that. It would have been 1-on-1, and it would have been Taker and Kennedy, and not Taker and MVP.
What if Taker and Kennedy? What if Taker and Kennedy had the match, but then MVP interfered?
One of them is in, I think, currently NWA.
I really want Mr. Kennedy to come back. I know he never will, but like.
Probably better off if he didn't.
I'd love. Okay,
he wouldn't be used.
Let me
properly.
say, I would. I know it's not that I'd rather have Mr. Kennedy in WWE. I'd want to see if they would have did his story right in WWE. He actually
did him dirty.
He becomes the world heavyweight champion, all that stuff. You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, we'll never.
He's
know.
a great talent.
But the next Buried Alive match would not happen until 4 years later. At this point, you know, we've seen Undertaker go from the older Undertaker, purple gloves with Paul Bearer, but, you know, being turned on Paul Bearer before the match, to Ministry Undertaker, to, you know, heavier kind of Ministry, post-Ministry, pre-Biker Undertaker, to now the American Badass Undertaker. Survivor Series 2003, Mr. McMahon versus The Undertaker. The weirdest match you'd ever think of, just because Undertaker is, you know, Vince McMahon's golden boy. More so than John Cena, just because he's someone he can rely on. You know what I mean?
The weirdest match that could ever take place?
Not
Or you
the
mean
weirdest, but...
Buried Alive match. Because there's been a lot of weird WWE matches. That's why I was saying that.
Weirdest match with the two people involved, because you never think Undertaker would go against Vince McMahon. You know what I mean? But the setup did kind of help with that. Undertaker had his life on SmackDown made a living hell by Vince McMahon. Undertaker was trying to beat Brock Lesnar to regain his WWE Championship. He failed. Vince was part to blame, so they had this match. You know, throughout the match, it more than likely was just Undertaker pummeling Vince up until the very end, where as Undertaker was about to bury Vince, Kane comes out, who would have thunk, and beats up The Undertaker. And this is post-mask Kane. So he was already, you know, baldy, no mask, deranged lunatic, beat up The Undertaker, and helped bury him. This is important because after this would be the end of Biker Undertaker. This is the end of the American Badass. This is where the character is buried, at least for the time being. And this match would help set up the return of The Undertaker at WrestleMania 20 the year following, or a couple months after in 2004, and lead to The Undertaker going back to his roots with Paul Bearer and going back with his long black trench coat, his hat, his old gear, semi-old gear, and his old a revamped version of his old theme. Well, is it a great match? No. But for storytelling purposes, it is good because it does set up for Undertaker to come back as The Undertaker, not a biker Texas version of The Undertaker. So, I mean, it does have that going for it, you know? And it's not just another match with Vince McMahon getting over his own talent.
Yeah.
Just like he did in the Royal Rumble. Or when he won the ECW Championship. Or when he won the WWE Championship. Or probably a bunch of other times. But after this, you would not have a Buried Alive match for 7 years. This is the longest hiatus up to this point. Or at least almost 7 years. It would be at Bragging Rights 2010, the second and final Bragging Rights pay-per-view for the WWE. Once again, it is The Undertaker versus Kane. This was at the height of their feud at the time. The Undertaker was storyline put out by an unknown assailant. He was basically like bedridden in a vegetative state almost. Is how the storyline went. Kane was trying to figure out who did it while also winning the Money in the Bank at Money in the Bank 2010 and cashing in the same night against Rey Mysterio to win his first World Heavyweight Championship. This would culminate into him blaming Rey Mysterio for it.
Like Rey Mysterio going to attack the Undertaker.
I know, like honestly.
Like that. Like, I'm not being mean about Rey Mysterio because I love, cruiserweights and luchadors and all of them. But, like, do you really think...
Tiny little Rey Mysterio.
Do you think Rey Mysterio is just going to beat down the Undertaker like that? Like, he's beaten him before.
Well, here's also my thing.
He's done stuff like that. Undertaker's been beaten by small people.
The only reason I would see that it would even be possible for Rey Mysterio to want to attack Undertaker was because of Royal Rumble 2010. Earlier that year...
Wasn't even that important.
Well, what I'm saying is earlier that year, it was Undertaker versus Rey Mysterio for the world title. It was a uncommon match because, Undertaker and Rey Mysterio, one giant, one luchador, cruiserweight. You wouldn't think it would work, but it did, at least for the time. And you have, that's really his only motive, Or it would have been his only motive. Why else would he want to attack the Undertaker, you know what I mean?
I don't know, but, I really wish they would have just been like Jack Swagger continued to have it. Because even though I don't like Jack Swagger when it comes to that story of him winning the belt, because, he's a good talent. But my thing is at least he's a little more realistic to beat up the Undertaker. Maybe. But, not Mysterio.
He wouldn't have a storyline purpose to beat up the Undertaker. But that's going on to a tangent.
But neither did Rey Mysterio besides the Royal Rumble match.
Anyway, it was revealed later on that it was, in fact, Kane, basic storyline. Oh, it was me all along. That son of a... as JR would say. It would ultimately lead to The Undertaker coming back from his hiatus and facing Kane 3 separate times. They had a one-on-one match for the world title at Night of Champions 2010. Which Undertaker lost. They had a match at Hell in a Cell 2010, which was before bragging rights. Undertaker lost in the Hell in a Cell. I believe this is also when Paul Bearer came back to aid Kane. And so they had their third and final match at bragging rights in the Buried Alive match. It was for the World Heavyweight Championship. It was a culmination, or not culmination, it was the final match in their feud that was probably for the best because Undertaker and Kane have never really worked well in matches one-on-one together. They've not had the best history. Some of their matches have been okay, but some of them have just, they don't work the best. They don't have the best chemistry. As a tag team, that's a little different, but one-on-one, not really. But it was a Buried Alive. They did bring it back. This would allow The Undertaker to go away for a little bit until 2011, where he would show back up and challenge Triple H at WrestleMania. It was for the world title. Paul Bearer was by Kane's side the entire time. And just when it looks like The Undertaker might win,
the most 2010 thing happened.
Well, it's not even that. It's just the most reoccurring thing in a Buried Alive match happens. And that someone interferes, and that someone was the Nexus.
The most 2010 team possible, the Nexus.
But here's my thing. There was no reason for the Nexus to attack.
Well, the only thing I can think of is that their logo was a part of the logo for bragging rights, and they didn't have a match scheduled. And they needed to look strong. Even though, wasn't Cena already a part of there?
No.
Was this pre-Hell in a Cell 2010?
No, this was post-Hell in a Cell.
Well, then that means that Cena was already
there was a match with the Nexus on the card. It was Wade Barrett versus Randy Orton.
Oh.
Cena is a special guest referee. That's when Cena left. Because he didn't count Orton to 3, you know what I mean? He didn't let Wade Barrett win.
Yeah.
The rest of the Nexus, I don't know if they had any matches, I'm not sure. But it was bragging rights and not like it really mattered. The Nexus came out, they beat up The Undertaker, and they helped Kane win with he did another, just like in the '03 Buried Alive match, they used a backhoe to pour dirt over The Undertaker. Kane wins, still the World Heavyweight Champion, I think, up until the end of that year.
I think one of my biggest issues with the whole Nexus thing is not the fact that it was random. It's not. Here's the biggest reason. Nexus.
They didn't go off of this.
Well, look, at the time, Nexus was going and they were like kind of beating up everyone, mostly John Cena. But my thing is that honestly, when you look at it, because of Wade Barrett, Nexus was a majority Raw. Nexus was a majority Raw team. They didn't always go on SmackDown. They were always mostly on Raw. And they interfered in a SmackDown match. Like, they barely interfered in SmackDown at that point. Because at first they went on both shows. They weren't signed to a deal, technically, except Wade Barrett, because he won NXT that year. But the thing is that it was a Raw team, pretty much. And they were interfering in a SmackDown match that neither of them had anything to do with the Nexus whatsoever. I don't think Kane or Undertaker had anything to do with the Nexus before that. Maybe Kane talked to them. I don't know. Like in storyline, I'm not sure. But it's dumb. I don't know.
Yeah, and like I said, they didn't really go anywhere with it after this. The only thing I could think of was they were going to do a Wade Barrett Undertaker match, but even then it never happened.
That would have been nice, though. But at that point, the core was a thing the next WrestleMania.
Yeah, but like I said, it never happened. It was Triple H for the second time. But this would be the final Buried Alive match for 9 years. So a longer hiatus than the 03 to 2010. It would go on a 9-year hiatus, almost, if it would have been around this time.
Well, technically, the Buried Alive matches never came back.
I know.
But
hold on. The namesake Buried Alive match was 9 years ago. But the concept happened again, and this was at WrestleMania 36 on April 4th, 2020. Now, of course, it was pre-taped, but this was night one of WrestleMania, of the two-night thing. It was happened on Saturday of the 4th of April. This was the Boneyard match between AJ Styles and The Undertaker. AJ Styles made it personal with The Undertaker, involving his wife, his real-life wife, Michelle McCool, involving his real name. So it humanized The Undertaker a little bit to where it wasn't this supernatural being. This was Mark Calloway, you know what I mean? It's kind of being brought up the way the Undertaker was acting in some of the pre-match stuff, attacking Gallows and Anderson. He was wearing a bandana. His, straps were down. He wasn't wearing his usual getup. A lot of people thought that he was going to bring back Biker Undertaker, and he technically did. This wasn't the Undertaker really in this match. At the beginning of this match, it was really Mark Calloway coming back to finish off AJ Styles because of what he was saying. During the match, AJ Styles came to the ring came to the Boneyard, in a hearse, in a coffin. He raised out of the coffin laughing, he was in blue jeans, had his t-shirt, ready for the match. Undertaker comes in on his bike, and there's druids with AJ Styles around. They eventually do try to attack Undertaker. It's revealed that Gallows and Anderson are there in a barn, try to help beat up the Undertaker.
They're always looking to beat up someone.
Yeah, I was gonna transition saying from the Nexus beating up the Undertaker to some people who love to beat up John Cena. I was gonna say that, but I decided not to.
I apologize. I love the beat up John Cena thing. That should have continued to be a thing. That should have been as over as the list of Jericho and
or when they were saying nerds
and all. Yeah, that should have been over. Beat up John Cena. That could have been a Was it a t-shirt? Was beat up John Cena a t-shirt?
No, they did bring it up to Vince, and Vince said, "Why would I want to promote a shirt that is saying to beat up one of my top talents?"
Because it's funny. Because it's cool.
But
because it's good.
But it's Vince. He wouldn't want someone to say when it rains it pours to make fun of Roman. They already edited out that.
Oh no,
that sign.
we'll make fun of freaking Cesaro for getting his teeth knocked in at
With Cyborg.
Yeah, that bull crap. Yeah. Like, it was funny.
Yeah.
It was funny, but...
Do you really
meh.
think Vince McMahon cares about Cesaro? Look at his booking in the last 10
Well, then
years.
they also banked off of the WrestleMania 36 I wasn't there shirt.
Exactly.
Like, forget you. I don't care. I wanted the beat up John Cena shirt. I wanted the CM Punk ice cream bars. I wanted all that stuff, but we didn't get it.
Well, you got the ice cream sandwiches.
That's
not
not
the
the
same.
same
It's not the
thing.
same.
I wanted a stupid looking CM Punk stick figure on an ice cream bar, and I got an ice cream sandwich that has Becky Lynch, Roman Reigns, John Cena, and the Macho Man Randy Savage. You can't even get one with both of the same person on both sides. They're different ones. Because I want Roman with someone as great as Macho Man.
Ladies and gentlemen, I opened up a can of worms. And to move on from that can of worms, this would be the last appearance of Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson before they were unfortunately released from their contracts
Bull crap.
as a part of WWE's spring cleaning, pretty much. Due to COVID, they were saying that it was setbacks, and they released and furloughed a lot of people, including Rusev, aka Miro, Sarah Logan, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson. Originally Drake Maverick they released. Zack Ryder, Kurt Hawkins, No Way Jose. I'm sure I'm missing people.
Are you referring
Did
to
they
just
officially
talent,
release Alicia Fox during that time as well?
I
Mike and
think-
Maria Kanellis, or Mike and Maria Bennett. I say Bennett. Naming Mike Kanellis is stupid. I know they furloughed Fit Finley. They furloughed Shane Helms, Lance Storm, and some of those were officially released. I think Finley was officially released.
Some of them are slowly coming back, but like people like Shane Helms
Well, like
have
furloughed,
not come
yeah.
back.
Shane
Yeah.
Helms has stated that on I think his own podcast. He had said something about he wasn't quite sure. They haven't said anything to him yet, but he said it sucks because when tax time comes, it'll definitely suck.
But at the same time, I also feel I know the pandemic kind of messes things up, but if he let's say for example he does get released, sadly, like if he does get released from WWE as a writer, he's a producer. He's a producer. Yeah, sorry, he is over enough to be able to go make it somewhere else.
ROH, he has his own
and
podcast
stuff
he's been
like
doing
that.
for the last couple years, so he's not going to be hurt as much.
Shane Helms is definitely one of my favorites, and one of my favorites that got furloughed and released, and I really hope that he stays, but at the same time, if he does stay, I kind of want to see Hurricane come back one more time. I know we saw him in the Royal Rumble, but kind of want to see it come back.
Yeah. But this would be the last time that you would see Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. They were both taken out by The Undertaker. I'm pretty sure, was it Luke Gallows that got choke slammed off the top?
I think so, yeah.
Onto the floor. They didn't show it, of course, but the match would culminate with AJ Styles and The Undertaker being on top of the roof. Taker would scare the bejesus out of AJ Styles by repeatedly mocking him and calling him boy, and then throwing his hands up as he did in the old days and shoot out flames behind AJ Styles. Choke slam AJ off the top onto a pout of pallets. AJ would gain the upper hand, beating up Undertaker and throwing him into the grave, but then getting on top of a tractor, thinking he beat him, and then this is the best match of WrestleMania. At least night one, if not the entire
my thing.
two-night special.
With WrestleMania 36, there was a lot of stuff going around it, having to be an empty arena, having to be a small arena, all that stuff. There were good matches, there were horrible matches, there were bad matches, and there were great matches. This was by far the best one, but you also had really good matches too, very strong matches. Even though I didn't like the outcome, I just want to bring this up because it was a good match. I look back on it, it was a good match. Shayna Baszler and Becky Lynch was a good match. It ended in a way maybe I didn't like, but I thought
it ended poorly.
I think the
wrong
only reason
person won.
Even though I love Becky Lynch, the wrong person won that match. But
that was bad booking.
My thing is that that match was still really solid for like a match.
Yeah.
And it was just a little short. It was a little short compared to what I expected. It's funny because that match was definitely, even though I like this match too, it was better than the triple threat ladder match. That one was good, but there was
the
only
tag team triple threat ladder match. I won a triple threat tag team
It was
ladder
a
match.
one-on-one, but it was still pretty good.
Yeah.
Still some solid, people in it. But no, I mean, this one was the best match. But then you also had the Firefly Funhouse match and all that stuff. But Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens was pretty solid in that spot at the very end. Solid.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I mean, Kabuki Warriors versus Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross was just a bunch of screaming. So I don't know how I feel about that one, but continue.
The reason I say I like this match and where I left off, where AJ Styles was on the tractor, this was a good match because it was one of the first matches to include the cinematic feel of WrestleMania and some of the post WrestleMania matches to follow. I think the last cinematic pay-per-view and event was Extreme Rules. The horror show at Extreme Rules. But AJ's on the tractor, he's all happy, and then you have a giant spotlight hit behind him, showing the Undertaker's behind him. He slowly turns around. Undertaker beats him up, choke slams him into the grave, buries him with the same tractor. It's the finish of the match. It's very fitting. Undertaker gets back on his motorcycle. Metallica plays in the background. He lifts up his fist as he is about to start. And you have flames rise from the barn. And you have a little light show going on that brings out the Undertaker's T logo in purple. And it looks awesome. It's an amazing shot and it's an amazing setup. And as he drives away, as Metallica is blaring, well, after he buries him, there's a grave right there. He takes off the moss, and it says AJ Styles, the date of his birth, and then it says the date of WrestleMania, which was really cool because it kind of teased it during the match. It's like, oh, whose name's on the grave? What does it say? This and that, and it just says AJ Styles. And as Undertaker pulls away after doing a little light show there, AJ's glove is sticking out of the ground, kind of like how Undertaker's did. So it does show that, it kind of teases AJ coming back. He probably came back a little too soon. As Ross from Cultaholic would say, he's supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
It was just really funny.
No, you know what's really funny, though? I want to back up a second. You're talking about how AJ Styles' name was already on the grave and stuff like that. Like, I get it. AJ Styles was going to lose. Undertaker was going to win. Undertaker is, Undertaker. But at the same time, like, don't get too cocky now. We've seen your track record on the Buried Alive matches, and there's a good chance it's going to say Undertaker on it, honestly.
Yeah,
like, obviously it's a joke. I mean, I'm kidding, but the thing is, it's just like, you've lost more than you've won.
Well, like I said, like, technically
this is not your match type. We know.
The only difference between this Buried Alive match and other Buried Alive matches is because it's not in an arena. It's in an actual quote-unquote graveyard or a boneyard. So it wasn't labeled as a Buried Alive, probably because of also PG, but it was a Buried Alive match.
Well, that's why you don't see a casket match anymore, man, or a First Blood.
Okay, casket match. The last casket match had to be around like 2013, or no, probably before. No, that was probably like 2012, 2013. It was Daniel Bryan. No, 2014 had to be. It was Daniel Bryan and Kane.
Oh, well, yeah. It wasn't like
it was on like a SmackDown.
Okay, yeah.
I say 2014 because that's the only time that I could really see Daniel Bryan and Kane having a feud, because in like 2012 they were a tag team. 2013 they were a tag team for a little bit.
By 14, Daniel Bryan had won the Day World Heavyweight Championship, so it had to have been.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like the timeline doesn't add up right there, but it had to be like 2014 that they had that match, because they advertised it as the first casket match probably in a while. I don't know how long.
No, but like First Blood matches, right? Like, I get that it makes it a little
edgier.
Well, I know that not being able to blade and having to use the capsule is not as edgy and not as cool, what you would consider it. But at the same time, if I could get a really solid First Blood match, then
Well,
use the capsule. I would be
the
okay
only
with it.
problem
whatever.
with it is because this harkens back to something that happened in the last year with AEW. When in Baltimore, they had I think it was a pay-per-view. I think it's when Moxley got busted open real bad. It was Mox and Kenny. Their match where it was really bloody.
The Full Gear match,
yeah.
the hardcore whatever it was.
When it was really bloody.
That was a solid match.
AEW was like in trouble, like in big trouble with Baltimore because they were saying, it was intentional bleeding and it went against, Baltimore's laws about that kind of stuff with pro wrestling and sports. That's probably why you don't see a lot of like mixed martial arts in Baltimore or in that area.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't. The thing is with me, it's that I don't have a problem with you using a capsule for a first blood match. Like, I'm not saying that has anything to do with Moxley and Omega.
No, I
Full
think
Gear.
they did like not blade, but they did get cut. I think.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that, I mean, if it's a solid match and you have to use that capsule at the end, I mean, do you really think I was expecting Rey Mysterio or Seth Rollins' eye to pop out? No, I knew it was going to be fake. I was expecting it to be fake. So if there's a little bit of fake
Honestly,
blood,
yeah,
that's
at that
fine.
point, if you did a modern First Blood, you would just make it kind of cinematic.
I think the problem with First Bloods now is that you're advertising that someone's going to bleed.
Yeah, and that'll
That's
turn away
the problem.
sponsors. Yeah.
And at the same time, though, UFC people bleed, and that's advertised
Yeah,
everywhere.
but
So-
it's not a given that they're gonna bleed because
Not,
sometimes
they're
it
not
doesn't.
advertising.
Well,
it,
it's,
no.
I say it's not a given, even though you're beating the crap out of somebody, because some of the matches won't go as long to where people are gonna bleed or it's heavy bleeding. You know what I mean? And they would stop it if it was like profusely bleeding, like if it was a deep cut, stuff like that. WWE, they have a record of not doing that. Look at John Cena when he bladed and cut I think he got an artery. Look at Eddie Guerrero when he bladed really, really bad. Look at Taker. He bladed by accident and hit an artery, and it was really, really bad. That's one of the reasons why they don't do it. Another reason is because, diseases, getting it between people, same thing that happened in ECW locker room, but not for getting busted open.
You know what's one way for people to start getting interested in WWE again? Have one match, not like multiple matches. One match. One person blades, one person takes a chair shot to the head, and one pile driver. After that, people would start coming back into watching wrestling.
The only problem with that is
Just one match
Okay.
that has that.
let me ask you a question. We kind of got off on tangent, but it's okay. With AEW, do they allow headshots?
I don't. I mean, Sammy Guevara hit Matt Hardy in the head, but
That was
I don't
not planned.
I'm not trying to make fun of Matt Hardy. Respect him.
Don't
but
get me on a tangent
About
about
Sammy
Sammy
Guevara.
Guevara.
We've
I've
been
done it
through
before. I will do it again, but I don't want to.
No, but I mean, besides that, I don't think I've seen. Moxley might have given Kenny a chair shot to the head during that Full Gear match. That match was great, by the way. But no, I mean, I don't know. But I mean,
That's why I asked, because I'm not sure. Like, I don't know what their rules are. I don't think they intentionally blade.
and honestly, if you have to take out the blading part, whatever, fine. If you have to take out the chair shot, whatever, fine. Let them use some moves that are maybe semi-illegal moves. Maybe
Well,
then
only
we would
problem
have
with the
some
pile driver
problems.
in WWE is just because look at the people that have gotten hurt with a pile driver. You know what I mean? You look at Steve Austin. He got his neck broke with a pile driver. Look at didn't Draws get his neck broke with a pile driver?
I think
Or
so,
was
yeah.
that
I can't remember what it was.
it might not have been a pile driver. It was I think it might have been a top rope, or not top rope, but like a outside dive by D'Lo. It's like it's a double-edged sword because you have wrestlers who can do the pile drivers. They're really good at the pile driver, but then it's like, but accidents happen. You can slip.
Or, you know what? Maybe
Look at the Styles Clash. That's why you rarely see it. That's why I hate about it, but you rarely see it in WWE because
that's why they had to change the dirty G. That's why they had to change the dirty deed.
Yeah, but at the
'Cause
same time, EC3 was using
used
it.
the same. I don't know. I really don't
Well,
know.
like with the Styles Clash, AJ Styles accidentally broke Yoshitatsu's neck in Japan because
Yes.
his his head was in the wrong spot.
And James Ellsworth
I was
almost
gonna
got
say, it almost happened to James Ellsworth.
destroyed.
That's why they don't do it. That's why you don't see the muscle buster, because it hurt Tyson Kidd. You see it rarely. You saw it, with Finn Balor at Takeover the End in the steel cage match, but that's it. You don't really see it as much.
Honestly, then if you take all that out, then you know what we need? We need some
It's not
solid
it's
wrestling.
not like they ban it. They ban the stomp, the curb stomp. You see Seth Rollins using it again.
Well, they unbanned it.
That's what I'm saying.
Back.
Some moves will, like a shooting star press. They banned that move for a while. They brought it back with Evan Bourne and then banned it again.
Even though it's a little different, I've talked a lot about Undertaker in this episode and praise him, but at the same time, if you're not gonna let people do pile drivers and stuff like that, then the tombstone shouldn't be a thing. Now, don't get me wrong,
the tombstone is protected.
Yeah, but it also can be wrong.
It can be, but not the way the Undertaker does it. The way the Undertaker does it now, if you look at it, their heads don't hit the mat. It can. You can always slip.
Okay, but what about the pedigree? It's not a pile driver, but it's...
I know.
You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
They did change the pedigree. At first, Triple H would hold their arms behind their back. Now he lets go. Speaking of the tombstone, the sit-out tombstone is what was used to break Steve Austin's neck by Owen Hart by accident. You know what I mean? Accidents can happen. Undertaker has definitely dropped somebody on their head. I'm pretty sure when he debuted, he dropped JYD on his head. I think it looked like it. That's why you had Kane do the tombstone the way he did when he was looking over the person's shoulder to make sure because he's wearing the mask. That's why Undertaker, does the tombstone the way he does now to protect people, especially Brock. Anything can happen. You can hurt somebody in any way, but it just accidents can happen. That's why they probably, even though it'd be cool to see the pile driver because everybody else uses the pile driver. I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. Eddie Kingston was using a pile driver in AEW. The pile driver is legal in most other companies except for WWE because they don't want to be held reliable because they're such a big company. You know what I mean? And that's the only thing. Like the tombstone, I'm pretty sure that's why Undertaker didn't use it for a while, just because voice crack. He wasn't comfortable using it at the time. It didn't fit his character, and he probably would have hurt somebody because he was so out of his element. You know what I mean? When he came back.
No, yeah, I get it. So before we end, every Buried Alive match had Undertaker in it. Would there be a matchup that you could think of that maybe would be a good Buried Alive match, whether it be right now, anytime before, in anything from 96 to now, that doesn't include the Undertaker, that could be a Buried Alive match, a solid Buried Alive match? What do you think?
My only thing is, with a Buried Alive match, it always involves someone with a certain gimmick. You can't really have a Buried Alive match without someone with that type of gimmick.
Someone has to interfere, though. You gotta remember that.
But, it has to have someone that, has the gimmick that they will kill you. Like The Undertaker would. Or, so anything involving Kane. Kane and MVP had a Inferno match. Why couldn't they have had a Buried Alive match?
So it's one that I think would be a solid match? Kane, Bray Wyatt. Take out the Ring of Fire match.
Yeah, take out the Ring of Fire match. That would have been good.
A Buried Alive match between Kane and Bray Wyatt.
And it would have worked because the
Wyatt family could interfere, and then Bray Wyatt would win. That would have been a solid match. Did they work well together? Kind of. But I think it would have been better than the Ring of Fire match because it had more to... Someone... In a Ring of Fire match, you didn't have to burn someone. You know what I mean? You just pin them. With a Buried Alive match, you have to get buried alive.
Or, when Kane and Matt Hardy were feuding.
That would have been pretty solid.
They could have had a Buried Alive match. Now, who would have won? That's difficult to say. Just because, the way the feud was going. Kane did get the upper hand in the feud. I don't know if Kane would have been a smart choice. I don't know if Matt Hardy would have been a smart choice. Who would have interfered or possibly not interfered during that match. I'm trying to think what else.
Now, you know who would have been good as well? This has to do with Undertaker, but Undertaker and Randy Orton back in their feud.
That could have been good.
That would have been pretty good. Also, I know this is maybe a little...
That would have been a good way to have Orton instead of like blowing up the Undertaker.
No, yeah, that's what I'm
Or
saying. That's
instead
how,
of like a casket match.
yeah.
Have it beat a Buried Alive because he could have easily won that, and then set up for Survivor Series when Taker came back.
Yeah, I think this might be a little before. I can't remember. But, no, it might be a little after. I can't remember. Bret Hart and Undertaker would have been pretty cool, too.
That was before.
Yeah.
That was before because that was still in like the new. What was it called? Is it the new era? What's it called?
See, yeah, it was like the new era of WWF.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, wait, that happened before the first Buried Alive match. But then I was thinking, which I might be wrong. I don't know my dates right now. But at the same time, wasn't the whole reason that Undertaker and Shawn had a match was because of the whole Bret Hart Undertaker match?
It was after the Heart and Soul SummerSlam match for the WWF Championship. Yeah.
So maybe it was after the first Buried Alive match. You know what I mean? That's why I'm trying to... I don't know my dates in my head right now. I don't have it written down.
Well, the first Hell in a Cell, was it not 97?
It was 97, but the first Buried Alive was 96, was it not?
Yeah, it was. Well, no, yeah, then the Buried Alive match could have very well fit because Undertaker was already out of that gimmick. He was already out of the...
Because imagine
the
this,
gloves
right?
and stuff. He was already in the ministry phase.
Because imagine this. Let's say...
So, yeah, it would have worked.
Shawn Michaels, does the whole thing with the heart and soul and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Bret Hart wins. Well, they have another match before the Hell in a Cell match, right? Buried Alive match. Bret Hart versus Undertaker.
Yeah.
Instead of it being like, oh, Shawn Michaels kicked Undertaker by accident or, whatever, blah, 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 like they did with the heart and soul, Shawn Michaels purposely super kicks Undertaker in the grave, helping Bret Hart win.
Yeah.
Which would have brought more tension to the Hell in a Cell.
Now, that
more reason to not like
that would have
the
worked
Heartbreak
because...
Kid.
Yeah, it would have worked because...
Maybe even have Triple H come in and
it would have had to been on a Raw.
Yeah,
that is the only way it would have worked
yeah.
because it was at In Your House Bad Blood. It was the only way it would have, a rematch, have Bret Hart versus Undertaker, have Undertaker get screwed over by Shawn and bury him. While also screwing over Bret a little bit, but screwing over Undertaker mostly, just because that's how the feud was heading. Yeah, that would have worked.
No, that would have been cool, and it would have given Bret Hart a little more to work with a stipulation match type deal. Like a gimmick match.
Yeah.
Which Bret Hart ain't no gimmick match guy.
No.
But at the same time,
None of the Harts are.
Let me tell you, I think Bret Hart could have worked with it. I really think. Put that sharpshooter at the grave. That'd been kind of cool.
He could have made it his own. Yeah, it would have been decent.
How cool would it have been? He was the sharpshooter near the grave. Undertaker gets out. He flips into the grave, but then crawls out and Shawn Michaels super kick. Blah blah. That'd have been funny. Like he just flips in the grave, does a whole flip bump into the grave.
What would have been good? Say Taker gets out of the sharpshooter near the grave. As he gets out, he starts pummeling Bret. Bret's on the ground, Undertaker standing up. He starts to pick him up, and then Undertaker turns around and gets super kicked by Shawn. Bret moves slightly, Undertaker falls into the grave, and that's how it ends. And Triple H is the one that buries him.
No, I got an idea. Exactly what happens. Blah, blah, super kick. Bret moves out of the way, follows in. Instead of Triple H helping, because yes, Triple H is with Shawn and all that stuff. What is Shawn Michaels and Triple H, D-Generation X trying to help Bret Hart? No, it's about The Undertaker. So maybe instead of Triple H, one of the Hart Foundation members goes in.
I don't know.
Or the Hart family. Neidhart or Brian Pillman. I don't know if he was there yet.
Something like that. Maybe.
Or maybe Triple H. I don't know. You never know. But
this is a conversation for another day, another... probably series, like a how would we book,
like what ifs, yeah,
like what if or how we would book certain things. That'd be nice. But to finish it off, we did talk about technically all six Buried Alive matches. Kind of our own little spin on how we would have booked certain matches over the last few years, the last decade or two. It was very interesting to talk about. Hopefully, on the next episode, we'll go somewhere along the same lines as this. I don't really have any ideas. Do you?
Well, actually, I was going to think about that. We have many ideas that we are thinking about doing for the next one and the next one and the next one. But actually, put in the comments, if you're listening to this on YouTube, put this in the comments of what you would like to see next, and continuously do that, because I think it would help us figure out what you want to see, what you want to hear. So whether it's from the 80s, the 70s, the 90s, now,
our tagline is wrestling from the past, present, and future. So,
and I feel that if we get requests from like the 70s, we get something from like the Bruno Sammartino ages, it'll make us more interested to go back into there. But yeah, put in the comments of what you would like to see next.
I think that'll do it for us today on episode 6 of the LA Do Wrestling Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at LADoBrand. You can follow the Wrestling Podcast on Instagram at LADoWrestling_podcast. And you can follow our regular podcast account at LADo_podcast.
You can find me on Instagram at ClintonWells2001. You can find our music engineer at chance.cummings.507. You can find our wrestling podcast editor, Ethan, at EthanThompson_.
And as always, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends if you're on YouTube, and if you're on any other platform, spread the word. Spread the word to your friends. If you liked it, if you didn't, send it to your enemies. Hopefully they might like it. And if they don't, hopefully they'll send it to their enemies, just until we get somebody that likes it. But I'll do it for us today. I'm Dalton.
And I'm Clinton.
And this has been the LA Do Wrestling Podcast.
See ya.